When I first started writing, I was what we often call a pantser. That's a person who writes by the seat of their pants, sits down at their computer or their notebook and just starts going. That was good. I had enough talent and enough experience to sort of carry myself through a story, but I wasn't breaking through. I wasn't at the, this is the very beginning of my career. I wasn't getting the book offers that I wanted to, and I thought, how can I be better? And for me personally, what I learned to do, I learned to break down my stories ahead of time and figure out what I was going to write before I sat down to write it. I started to separate what I was writing from how I was going to write it. And a lot of young writers will say, I don't know how to get over writer's block. Writer's block is when you sit down and you have time to write and you want to write and you've got your notebook, you're there, your computer open, and nothing happens, right? You just sit there staring at the screen. And I would get writer's block just like pretty much every writer that I know. For me, though, I learned to separate those two things. To me, writer's block comes when we try to do too much at one time. We're trying to figure out how to write a story and also what happens in the story. I thought, okay, I just wrote down on a piece of paper, this happens, then this happens, then this happens, all the way out. I made a roadmap for myself to follow. Then when I sat down to actually write my story, I wasn't doing two things at once. I wasn't trying to figure out what happened and then how to tell it. I was just figuring out how to tell it because I already figured out what happened. So this was a big leap for me and really helped me evolve as a writer to say, what is a part of my process that's not working? So to me, I now outline everything in great detail. All these little note cards that are back here behind me in my office, those are all chapters of the new book that I'm working on. This is my big board. And every time I start a new story, it's empty. And I start to pin up ideas for chapters all on that board. Once I have that board full, I take them down, bring them over here to my computer, type them up, and then I move all my research notes over into that outline. Then I put the cards back up because I like to see the big picture. But I have now on my computer my roadmap. I have my outline with all my notes moved into it. This was a big breakthrough for me, especially as a person who writes historical fiction, where I had a lot of research to keep track of. So if there's a young writer who's watching this and you get to the middle of a story and you're like, I don't know what happens next, and you put it aside and you have a whole bunch of half-written stories because you don't know how to finish them, don't write it. Don't write the dialogue. Don't write the setting. Don't write the words and sentences and paragraphs that you're going to write later. Just write the roadmap. And then once you have a whole roadmap, now go back and see if you can figure out how to tell it. That's what I do. That's how I split up my writing. That was a huge breakthrough for me as a writer. And one thing that I'm much better about now, even than when I started 20 years ago.
This author interview was produced through a partnership of the Grateful American Foundation and WETA. For more author interviews, please visit adlit.org.